Can you even call this a bag? Ruby's voice dripped with disdain as she held up Alina's faded backpack, shaking it like it might fall apart in her hands. Looks more like something you'd find at a lost and found sale. Claire laughed from her perch on the window ledge, her perfectly manicured nails tapping rhythmically on her phone screen. Forget the bag. Have you seen her shoes? I didn't know thrift stores even sold things that outdated. Alina sat quietly on her bunk, her textbook open but unread. She felt their stares like daggers, each word a calculated jab meant to humiliate. It was always the same snide remarks about her clothes, her things, or the fact that she didn't fit their idea of belonging. Hey! Earth to Alina, Ruby called, tossing the backpack onto the floor. Did you hear what I said? Or do I need to speak slower? Alina looked up, her expression calm despite the fire burning in her chest. She had mastered the art of keeping her cool, letting their words roll off like water on glass. But inside, every insult fueled a growing resolve. They thought they had her figured out, a quiet, penniless girl who was too meek to fight back. What they didn't know was that she was the daughter of one of the most powerful billionaires in the country. She had chosen this life to escape the suffocating expectations of her family, to prove she could stand on her own. But Ruby and Claire were about to find out just how wrong they were. Ruby smirked, leaning against her desk. What's wrong, Alina? Cat got your tongue? She tossed her sleek hair over her shoulder, exuding confidence. Oh wait, I forgot. You probably can't afford one of those either. Claire cackled from the window. Classic Ruby. She always knows how to sum it up, doesn't she? Alina's grip tightened on her pen. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. Reacting now would only give them satisfaction. She had endured their mockery for months, but their latest antics were pushing her patience to its limits. She glanced at the clock on the wall. The day wasn't far off when they would learn the truth, and that thought kept her steady. She gathered her things and stood, forcing herself to remain calm. If you're done, I've got a study group to get to, she said evenly, her voice soft but steady. Ruby scoffed. Study group? Oh please, is that what you call sitting alone in the library with your nose in a book? Claire leaned closer, fake curiosity lighting up her face. Wait, maybe she's actually part of one of those nerdy clubs where they talk about calculus for fun. Sounds like her style, doesn't it? Their laughter echoed in the room as Alina walked out. She didn't let them see the way her jaw clenched or how her hands shook ever so slightly. She needed to be patient, just a little longer. By the time Alina reached the campus library, her mask of composure had cracked. She slumped into a chair in a quiet corner, pulling out her phone. There it was, a text from her father. Dad, the event is confirmed. Do you want me to arrange transport? Or will you be taking your car from the city? Her car. It was one of a fleet, a custom-designed sports vehicle she had deliberately left in the city to keep her identity hidden. No one here knew who she really was. To Ruby and Claire, she was just a poor scholarship student. To the world outside, she was Alina Knight, the heiress to the Knight fortune and one of the wealthiest families in the country. She tapped out a response. Me, no need. I'll manage. Just let me know the time. Alina stared at the screen. The event would be her father's annual gala, an extravagant affair attended by celebrities, politicians, and business moguls. For months, she had avoided these obligations, carving out her own life away from the suffocating wealth and power her family wielded. But now, she wasn't so sure she wanted to keep her identity a secret. If Ruby and Claire thought they could treat her like dirt, they were in for the shock of their lives. A few days later, Ruby and Claire sat in their usual corner of the cafeteria, gossiping loudly about their weekend plans. Oh, I just have to show you the new shoes I got, Ruby said, pulling out her phone. Limited edition. Like they only made 50 pairs. Ugh, you're so lucky, Claire sighed. Meanwhile, I'm stuck with last month's fashion. The horror. Alina walked by with her tray of food, keeping her head down. She wasn't in the mood for another confrontation, but Ruby spotted her anyway. Hey, Alina, why don't you join us? Ruby called, her voice saccharine sweet. Alina froze. She knew better than to take the bait. but something about Ruby's smug smile made her pause. She walked over to their table and stood still, her expression unreadable. "What is it now?" she asked softly. Ruby leaned back in her chair. "Nothing, really. Just wondering if you've ever thought about, upgrading your wardrobe. You're embarrassing all of us." "Honestly," Claire giggled. "I mean, we're doing you a favor by telling you this. Who else would?" Alina didn't respond. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. With a few taps, she opened an article on the upcoming Night Foundation Gala and slid it across the table. Ruby glanced at the headline, her brow furrowing. Knight family to host annual gala. A night of philanthropy and prestige. "What is this?" Ruby asked, confused. Alina tilted her head slightly, her voice calm but laced with steel. "You should read the guest list." Claire peered over Ruby's shoulder, her eyes widening as realization dawned. There it was. In bold print, Alina Knight, daughter of billionaire philanthropist William Knight, confirmed as a special guest. Ruby's face drained of color. "You're kidding." "Wish I was," Alina said with a small smile. "But don't worry, you won't have to see me in these thrift store clothes much longer. I'll be debuting something a little more appropriate." She picked up her tray and walked away, leaving Ruby and Claire gaping in stunned silence. The next few days on campus were eerily quiet around Ruby and Claire. Alina continued to keep to herself, but she could feel the tension brewing. It was clear they had been shaken by what they'd read. Yet, she knew their bruised egos wouldn't let them back down so easily. Sure enough, Ruby struck first. It was during a lecture. The professor was wrapping up his talk when Ruby raised her hand. "Professor, I was just wondering," she began, her tone dripping with fake curiosity. "Do you think it's fair for some students to, buy their way into programs?" Asking for a friend, of course. A ripple of laughter spread through the classroom. Alina didn't flinch, even as several students turned to glance at her. The professor frowned. "Our university prides itself on its merit-based admissions. Ruby. I'd hope that all students here earn their place through hard work and talent." Ruby's smirk faltered slightly, but she wasn't done. "Oh, absolutely. But sometimes connections help, don't they? Like when your last name opens doors that others don't get to walk through." Alina met Ruby's gaze across the room. There was no anger, no reaction. Just a calm, steady look that made Ruby shift uncomfortably in her seat. Later that evening, Alina sat on a bench in the campus gardens, scrolling through her phone. She had made a decision. Her patience was wearing thin, and it was time to remind Ruby and Claire that wealth wasn't just about money. It was about power, influence, and knowing how to wield both. Her father's assistant had sent her a message earlier. "The gala arrangements are complete. Would you like me to extend an invitation to your classmates?" Alina smiled. Oh yes, she thought. This is going to be fun. The next morning, Ruby and Claire found glossy envelopes slipped under their dorm room door. Ruby tore hers open, her eyes narrowing as she read. "The Knight Foundation requests the honor of your presence at its annual philanthropy gala. Dress code: black tie." Ruby's face lit up with glee. "Claire, look at this. We're invited to the Knight Gala." Claire gasped, snatching the invitation from Ruby's hands. "No way. Do you know how exclusive this event is? This is like the party of the year." Ruby's excitement dimmed slightly as she glanced at the envelope again. "Wait. Why would we get invited?" Claire shrugged. "Who cares? Maybe they're broadening their guest list this year. Besides, this is our chance to network. Imagine who we could meet." Neither of them realized the trap they were walking into. The night of the gala was nothing short of spectacular. The venue, a sprawling estate surrounded by manicured gardens and glittering fountains, buzzed with energy as luxury cars pulled up one by one. Ruby and Claire arrived together, dressed in their finest gowns, practically vibrating with excitement. "This place is insane," Claire whispered as they stepped inside, their heels clicking on the marble floors. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above them, and the room was filled with well-dressed elites, sipping champagne and exchanging polite conversation. Ruby glanced around, her sharp eyes scanning for anyone famous. Let's find someone worth talking to, she said, dragging Claire toward the main hall. As they passed a group of attendees, they froze. There, standing at the center of a circle of admirers, was Alina. But she wasn't the Alina they knew. Dressed in an elegant, custom-made gown, her hair styled perfectly, and adorned with jewels that glittered like the night sky, Alina looked every inch the billionaire heiress. She smiled warmly at the people surrounding her, exuding confidence and grace. Ruby's jaw dropped. That can't be her. Claire tugged at Ruby's arm. It is her. What the? Before they could retreat, Alina spotted them. Her smile widened, but there was an unmistakable glint in her eyes. She excused herself from the group and approached them, her steps deliberate and measured. Ruby, Claire, Alina greeted them, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. I'm so glad you could make it. Ruby scrambled for words. You're the host, Alina finished for her, tilting her head slightly. Didn't I mention that before? As the evening progressed, Alina made sure Ruby and Claire were seated at a table near the center of the hall, where everyone could see them. When it was time for speeches, Alina stepped onto the stage. The room fell silent as she addressed the crowd. Good evening, everyone, she began. Thank you all for joining us tonight. The Knight Foundation has always been about lifting people up, creating opportunities, and fostering kindness. Her gaze swept the room, landing briefly on Ruby and Claire. But unfortunately, not everyone understands the importance of kindness. She continued, her voice steady but carrying an edge. Some people think it's acceptable to look down on others, to judge them based on appearances or circumstances. A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience as Alina's words sank in. Ruby and Claire shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their faces burning with embarrassment. Alina smiled. Thankfully, events like these remind us that true worth isn't about what you wear or where you come from. It's about character. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Ruby and Claire sat frozen, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Ruby and Claire spent the rest of the gala in stunned silence, sipping their champagne as Alina moved gracefully through the crowd, greeted by dignitaries, business magnates, and celebrities. For the first time in their lives, they weren't the center of attention. Claire leaned closer to Ruby, her voice a harsh whisper. What are we going to do? She's like royalty here. Ruby clenched her jaw, her pride wounded. I don't know, but this doesn't make sense. She's been living like a pauper in that dorm room all this time. Why would someone like her hide this? I don't know, Claire replied nervously, her eyes darting around the room. But if she tells people how we've treated her, Ruby's stomach churned. For the first time, she realized that their actions had consequences, especially now that they knew who Alina really was. The next morning, Ruby and Claire dragged themselves back to their dorm room, still reeling from the events of the night. They hadn't dared to approach Alina again at the gala, choosing instead to slink into the background. But the damage was already done. As they entered the room, they found a note on Ruby's bed, written in Alina's elegant handwriting. Good morning, ladies. I hope you enjoyed last night. Just a reminder, kindness matters. You'll hear from me soon. Alina. Ruby crumpled the note in her fist, her face red with anger. She's messing with us. She's not going to do anything. Claire wasn't so sure. You didn't see the way people were hanging on her every word. She could ruin us if she wanted to. What if she tells the school administration? Or worse, her father? The following week on campus was a nightmare for Ruby and Claire. The story of Alina's true identity spread like wildfire after the gala. By Monday morning, everyone knew that the quiet girl in the dorm room was none other than Alina Knight, the billionaire heiress. Students who had previously ignored her now went out of their way to greet her, offering compliments or asking for favors. Professors treated her with newfound respect, and even the dean stopped by one of her lectures to personally commend her philanthropic work. For Ruby and Claire, it was as though the tables had turned overnight. Hey, Alina, one of their classmates called out in the cafeteria. Are you free this weekend? My dad owns a yacht. We could host a party in your honor. Ruby clenched her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white. This is ridiculous. she muttered under her breath. Claire poked at her salad, her appetite gone. It's not fair, she whispered. She didn't do anything to deserve this. Ruby scoffed. She's just lucky. That's all this is, luck. But deep down, even Ruby knew it wasn't luck. Alina's composure, her intelligence, and her quiet strength had always set her apart. The only difference now was that everyone else could see it too. One evening, Alina returned to the dorm to find Ruby and Claire sitting on her bed, waiting for her. Ruby stood as Alina entered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Alina, Ruby began, her tone unnaturally sweet. We just wanted to say we're sorry for, everything. Alina raised an eyebrow, setting her bag down. Sorry, she repeated, her voice calm but skeptical. Claire nodded eagerly. Yeah, we didn't mean any of it. We were just joking around, We didn't realize that I was rich? Alina finished for her, crossing her arms. Ruby and Claire exchanged nervous glances. It wasn't about that, Ruby said quickly. We got off on the wrong foot. But we want to make it right. Alina regarded them for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You want to make it right? She repeated slowly. Yes, Claire said, her voice almost pleading. We'll do whatever it takes. Just, please don't ruin us. Alina tilted her head slightly, as if considering their words. Ruin you? She echoed. What makes you think I'd do that? Ruby hesitated. Well, you could. With your connections and everything. But we're genuinely sorry. Right, Claire? Totally, Claire agreed, nodding vigorously. Alina sighed softly and walked over to her bed. For months, I let you humiliate me because I thought it wasn't worth fighting back. I thought if I stayed quiet, you'd eventually get bored and leave me alone. Ruby and Claire shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. But now, Alina continued, her voice steady, I realize that letting people walk all over you only makes them think they can get away with it. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes piercing. You two don't get to decide how this ends. I do. The following week, Ruby and Claire received letters from the dean's office. They were summoned for a disciplinary hearing regarding their treatment of a fellow student. Alina hadn't needed to say much. Her reputation alone was enough to prompt the administration to act. By the end of the hearing, both girls were placed on probation, their spotless records tarnished. They were also required to attend sensitivity training and issue a formal apology to Alina in front of the student council. But Alina wasn't finished. Through her family's foundation, she anonymously funded a new scholarship program for underprivileged students. The first recipients were announced at a campus-wide event, with Alina delivering the keynote speech. Ruby and Claire were forced to watch as Alina celebrated the very values they had mocked. Months later, Alina sat in the dorm room she no longer needed to share. Ruby and Claire had moved out after the fallout, unable to face the constant judgment from their peers. As Alina packed her things, preparing to move into an off-campus apartment, she reflected on how much had changed. She had learned to stand up for herself, to embrace her strength without losing her kindness. And as for Ruby and Claire, they had learned a lesson they would never forget. True power wasn't about wealth or status, it was about character.